Yeah, I want to show how to check for parasitic draw on a battery. And parasitic draw means that if you have a battery sitting for a day or so and you have a good battery in the car, it can go dead because somewhere in the car there's something drawing too much electricity or something's not shutting off. Well, the first thing to do is to make sure you have a good battery. Now, this is set on a 20-volt scale on the gauge, and just connect it up to the battery. Make sure you got the right voltage. Fully charged battery will be about 12.7 volts, and you can see this has 12.9 volts, so that's plenty charged up. This is a fully charged battery. Now, next step is going to remove the negative cable and check to see if there's any kind of amps being drawn while the car is stationary and shut off with the engine off. So typically on the gauge you have to switch the plug to 10 amps DC and put the switch on 10 amps DC. Typically you'll have to change the plug to a different hole in here on the gauge. So what you would do is you would hook up the gauge on the, you could use either the positive or the negative, but it's better to use the negative because it's a lot safer, because if you ground out the positive by mistake, you'll create a short and you could short something out, short your gauge or short your computer out. In this case, this car doesn't have a computer. Now, surprisingly, that this car has a very slight draw, but it's okay. It shouldn't really have any, but it might be due to going through the alternator. But the car needs to have below 50 milliamps of draw to be okay, where it's considered that's a low enough parasitic draw, because typically you'll have a clock sitting in a car that's ticking away, or a computer, or some kind of monitoring system in a security system. So there's always a slight draw. But if you have like an amp or half an amp, that's too high of a draw. So I'm going to just open the door on this car. This is and you can see, what happens is the dome light goes on, and the gauge would go up to almost a full amp. So it's pulling an amp right there. So that would give you an indication that something's wrong. The light was left on or whatever. But that's typically not how you would check this, because that's a simple fix. You would know that just the dome light was left on. Most cars today, the dome lights go off automatically with the computer. But you would do is you would check this by pulling fuses until you see this gauge drop off. And when you pull the fuse and say the gauge drops off to 0, dropped off to 0 like that, you'd say there's the problem. If you put the fuse back in, you see the thing goes back up, and it's pulling a draw in some kind of amps. It could be pulling 2 or 3 amps. In this case, just the interior light, it deliberately did this. It's doing less than 1 amp, but then you found the source. And from there, you go and check it, one step at a time. Now I'm going to show what to do on a Sebring Convertible, because I think those cars had a lot of problems. They seem to draw quite a bit anyway, just when they're sitting stock. But I'm going to go over what fuses to actually pull, especially first, so you can probably narrow it down a lot quicker. Now, with the Sebring Convertible, this 96 to 2000, you have this cover that goes over the side, and you just put your hand in the side grip here, and you pull it out. You just pull it out. It just comes right out. Typical fuse that they take out, say at the dealer, if they're going to let the car sit a while and they don't want any kind of parasitic draw, is this one, fuse number 5. It sits right in the middle. So that one might be one to start with, because say for instance you got, it pulls out a lot of different little things like courtesy lights and stuff that could be stuck on. And so if you're checking for a parasitic draw in this car, that would be the first thing to check. Pull this one out, fuse number 5. Now, on the inside of the door of the fuse holder is you actually have a list and of the different fuses are and what they're for. So you have in order, just as it sits, number 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is 5. 5 is actually the one that's the catch-all fuse, and this is not going to come out correctly on the film, but if you have this door, you'll be able to read exactly what they're for. Now, there's another thing you want to check underneath the hood and pull some of the fuses on there too. Now, that's all in the Sebring Convertible. You want to pull the fuse box, the fuse holder on the top, and this is on the engine bay. Okay, you can see this is the engine bay. And you have various fuses in here, and also they're all labeled exactly what they are on the inside of the cover. Now, if you're missing this cover for some reason, from the top it shows there's the positive on the battery cable. You would go ahead. You can actually order this part online. It's not a dealer part, but you would be pulling out each one of these fuses to see if there's a problem where that's causing a parasitic draw. But of course, on a Sebring, the battery is located inside the wheel well, and I have a separate video on how to get to that, but you'd have to take the wheel off. But this is just a demonstration as to how to use the gauge itself. So what you're looking for is anything over 50 milliamps. So if your battery keeps going dead for because when a car sits and the battery itself is actually good, you have a parasitic draw. So that's how you would trace it down. You'd pull one fuse at a time until that gauge went down to 0 or got down into acceptable range, and then you would narrow it down from there. More than likely, try that fuse number 5 on the interior fuse box panel first, because that could very easily be that could be the problem right there.